I'll immolate myself.
Go
I
on.
don't care. Right? You know, if this one T1's year is a categorical failure, I don't give a fuck what anyone had to say.
Even wait a minute. So just the opening gambit goes right. This is good, Kevin, because even I'm like, are you fucking kidding me, bro? Like, so the opening gambit is T1's 2024 was a complete, like, what I'm just saying about a complete failure, including winning worlds, right? Including
Yes.
Hey, come on then, hit me with it. Hit me with this shit, okay.
No. And here's the thing, Thorn. I was actually on your show with Valdez, and I said this, so I'm not even retrospectively saying this, by the way. I actually said this with Valdez at the time. People like Zeus, people like Korea, people like Faker, like Letho, like they actually need to like show that they can be the great players like Chove and Nightcan and Ben for the whole year. And Zeus failed like this individually. Owner was really, really good this year, but Korea had like a crazy collapse in the summer split, along with Faker as well. And then you look at it, they placed well at like in a bunch of stuff, but they won one championship, very close in like game 5, and they only won Worlds. But this team,
are we ignoring EWC? We're just going to say that's not included in the.
I'm
okay. They did win that though, but yeah, okay, I get you. That wasn't in the right circuit. Okay.
What do you call it? And if you just like, if you look at the rest of like, because it's very different, right? When this team were the rookies and choosing to stay together.
Sure, yeah.
But now, as you keep on staying together and not changing the roster, the expectations keep coming up because you're basically saying, I am choosing all of these players as T1 rather than the rest of the pool of
I see what you mean, right, yes.
Yeah,
okay.
So you're choosing to have these players on the roster rather than like switching them out, right? Okay. And because you think this is the best 5-man lineup T1 can make. Because they have the monopoly.
Oh, and by the way, they paid a lot of money for the lineup too. It's not like it was cheap either. Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Right? So the expectations, because everyone's like, oh, but like they were all picked up as rookies. I was like, yes, and then they chose to re-sign them all again and again and again. So the expectations come up. And I said this at the start of the year, the expectations of and they are winning Worlds, which is the most important, but the whole thing of just winning one tournament isn't good enough for this like T1 lineup. Like they need to have like extended like periods of like greatness, of like trying to like string together like an actual dynastic like year. Like they're the team that should be honest to God like challenging and trying to put together like the golden road rather than just a flash in the pan.
Okay, what do you think, Sabatine? Wasn't actually as crazy as usual when he explained it as it sounded initially. Come on, what do you think?
I can't. I mean, it's they won Worlds right against Genji,
the
BLG.
best teams, bro, the best teams in the world. Yeah, I know.
I feel like there is. I think advocating that the year of T1 or the whole project of this roster has been underwhelming in comparison to their peak performance. Is overall, I think on the span of 3 years, I would say you can make a case for that, saying that like the year has been more than they've achieved. You can definitely like make a case for these T1 roster underachieving to some extent, right? Because they started strong, like doing the perfect split and things like this. So you really were expecting, everybody was expecting like the most dominant roster ever. And if people consider this one the best roster in the world, it hasn't been the most dominant one, right? Like if you consider by best peaking at the right time and beating all the best teams in the most important tournament, definitely you can say that, but hasn't been the most dominant. And you can give that, but come on, like you cannot say like this is a complete failure. It's like how many shots you have in a year, right? Just like you have spring, summer, LMSI, Worlds, and EWC. I mean, you don't want to count it. They win 2 out of the 5, including the most important one. Beat their direct rival on the biggest stage. Beat the best team in the world. I would say like BLG over the span of the year, if you look at like the best team, has been the most consistent one, right? Back-to-back runner-up in international finals. Locally dominant, seed 1 of the LPL both times. So it's like if it's not Genji, it's BLG, right? It's like the case for the best team in the world over the span of the year. So I would say, I think you can definitely say that like this roster is very frustrating to deal with because they only peak 3 weeks in a year, and delivering on League of Legends is not only like about being good the 15th of October, But I would say it is, for me, I can't defend the fact that it's a bad year for T1. Like, I straight can't do it. Thorin, you can help me, but on this one,
Bro,
I think it's a great year for them.
Go on then, come on.
I hold teams, by the way, to really high standards, Aberdeen. Because I even said to Thorn at the start of this year, the Gen G have to look at this as also like a massive failure in the context of all the players that they had. And like BLG is the closest, but even then they was like probably disappointed. When you have Knight and Bin as your solo laners, like, and you then build a core around them, right? At the end of the day, the whole idea is that like you are supposed to attempt to be unbelievably like dominant, and they were very, very good, but they also like fell short. The problem is like T1 is those teams, but even worse. As in, like, they won at the very, very end where they like peaked, and they were very, very good at that like peak. But the rest of the year, when just using their eyes, like all of summer reg, MSI, some of summer playoffs, you know, they failed in spring finals, like all of that, like those are all like big, big failures for this roster. And I think a lot of people are getting caught up in the emotions of them finally winning at like the top, without actually looking at like what the expectations were at the start of the year, because they came in as the best team in the world because they just won Worlds, and then they had no continuation of that.
But this way, like all great hot takes, I actually think this is why it's a great hot take, Zabati. I don't agree with it, which means it probably is a well-crafted hot take. But as I said, once he started to explain it, it wasn't as crazy as it initially sounded. Like, the real problem with the hot take is you can do the exact same take, and I would almost agree with it like 85%. If you just made it this right, I would phrase it differently, because it actually has the same effect, key rate. It's just that then the idiots can't go, but they won Worlds, the most important tournament, because that's the easiest counter right now to what you're saying. Like, I agree with Zabatine. I'm sorry, if you rank the tournaments that I want to win, obviously, no matter who we are, Worlds is number one. And if I do win Worlds, it could never be a failure of a year. Like, it could be that it wasn't as successful as it could be. I would phrase it this way. I would have said this, Kira. I would say that actually 2024 is still underwhelming for T1, because then people would go, what? No, that can't be. But then what you do is then you build it like you did. You go, well, first of all, I'm saying 2024, not the whole roster lineup, right? Because it's true, past years, they didn't win that many titles. But as you said, like, if you think about when they had those 4 players, by the way, in 2021, they had already the core that they started to bring in. Remember, they were doing the 10-man roster. Then they got in Zeus. And then actually, if you remember that first year, people were like, actually, have they fucked up by gambling on all the rookies? Maybe they should have got some veterans in. Where are their great players from the LPL coming back? You know, people like Defton that were coming back to Korea. Like, those years, you could have done a very easy one. I agree with you, though. If you set it up this way, if you say, when you win Worlds, right, first of all, every fan's going to tell us last year that means T1 at the end of the year was the best. They were better than JDG. They were better than Genji. Then if you say, and you had millions to spend because you were the world champions and T1, you had potentially, I believe this is true, by the way, you have, in my opinion, the biggest magnet ever to get any player you want. Like, I agree with that. That's something I did say all year long on Some of the Insight. Before T1 had won Worlds, I did say, I actually think this year is going to end up being a wasted year, because if you look at the rosters of the other super teams out there, bro, couldn't you have just had this team? Like, I'm pretty sure if T1 said to Viper, you know what, mate, come play with us. Like, I'm pretty sure he'd rock over. If they, look, mate, you know what, maybe not everyone says yes. Let's say Canyon says yes to Gen G. Bro, I'm pretty sure Tarzan from Weibo would have said yes in an instant to come over and play in T1. So in my opinion, to put your point in perspective, I actually do agree. I think if you'd made roster moves with those players, you could have won everything, bro. I think you're right. I actually think, logically, if you're the world champion and you've got potentially like the most ability to get in other great players, I think the goal shouldn't be win Worlds again. It should be win everything. It should be actually, like, by the way, wouldn't that be sick as well if you're Faker? Be the only person who ever did the Golden Road, the Grand Slam. That would be the ultimate goal to have if you're Faker, right? So if you want to do then separate after that, yes, of course it's underwhelming. Like, spoiler, except for Worlds, they did nothing. They did EWC, which is outside the Riot circuit, and at all the real tournaments, like, look, I'll give them this. They could have won the spring split. They didn't. Yeah, they could have, but even then they could have, right? Some of they couldn't have won. I mean, the joke is even Gen G didn't win that one. And then MSI, forget about it, bro. Like, that's probably the most fugazi of all of theirs. Because when Monty always goes, they've only ever come third. It's like, bro, that's probably the worst third I've ever seen from an Asian team. That's the one where they almost got clapped twice by G2, for fuck's sake. Like, that was a rough one. So anyway, I agree with it overall. But I can't say the one where it's like it can't be a failure for you win Worlds. And also, here's the other reason why, Kira. If they'd have won Worlds, but in the way that DRX won in 2022, then I'd say fair play. But I actually have to say, this is where idiot fans will never understand. I'm not a Faker hater. I'm a Faker connoisseur. I only want to see peak Faker. Or I want to appreciate him as a captain, but then not say he's the best player. Because, bro, the way that they actually actually won this one was fucking straight fire, like as he said. The two teams they beat, like remember, if either Gen G or BLG wins this Worlds, and think of the years they're having, they'd be like top 5 all-time team guys, like, and T1 beat both of them. And then if you're a Faker fan, it even literally like something out of a bad fucking shonen anime from fucking Japan, Faker, the actual champion, like re-emerged on those games as well. Like literally like, every wet dream of a T1 stan of how he came in. Like I even said it on Twitter, like, bro, he used a fucking ability called Hero's Entrance to enter a team fight. Like literally, like it's almost like it was designed to make it look like Faker's coming in Superman. Like, and then he just saved the whole day. And it's like, the joke is, if me and Dom actually did hate T1, yeah, you're right, we'd all be mouthing and like fucking opening the window and preparing to jump out or whatever. But we had like, here's what you will actually know, guys. I could do this is a hot take. That actually was what might be the best moment in the history of esports. I've seen all the moments in esports. That was actually straight fire. Like I love when people do shit like that, like actual real carry play. So anyway, to summarize, as usual, I can agree with the spirit of Kira's take, but the letter of the law that it was like what was the actual original take? That it was a complete listen, it can't ever be a complete failure to win Worlds. Come on,
bro. When you're DRX and you win one, right? That's fine.
Someone who was a fan of Forgiven, never even made an LEC final, LCS 0 LEC titles, Flame 0 OGN titles, Rookie got 1 World. I have to at least give some status to like titles. I can't be like, they all suck. It's pretty hard to win titles, Kira.
They're underachievers as individuals.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm talking about teams here. You know what I mean? I'm talking about teams. And here's the thing, right? Okay, here's like the ultimate like catch all of like, T1 is supposed to be the most like premier like organization, right? Okay, and hang on, what? I do not know why, right? Okay, they must have like the most like, not like underachieving like fans, but they get like a lot like the normies that come in just to watch Worlds.
And of course.
It's like, I do not know how like they are consistently like just settle for less. Like it just seems like all the time.
You mean the fans or the players?
Yeah, like the fans or the players. It's like where the.
Put it this way, I'll give you a mini spin. I got a mini hot take about it I can spin from this, because this will make T1 fans mad. Here's how you actually know that I and you, we actually hold T1 to a way higher standard than their own fans. Because if you want to take your take and make it spicy, here's what you do with it. If you actually consider the last 3 years, the full time they had the full 5-man roster, you know these fans actually don't believe they were ever the best. Because, look, 2 Worlds is amazing. But if I say 2 Worlds, EWC, 1 LCK, that's all for 3 years. That's actually underwhelming if you were the greatest team of all time. If you're actually the greatest team of all time, by the way, you'd have like a gang of LCKs as well. By the way, even for MSI, you'd at least made the MSL finals. You know what I mean? You'd fuck around, do that shit, do some JDG shit where you lose like 1 series. You can lose. It's just the problem is, like, the actual haul isn't as crazy as you'd think. Like, if you actually are the best team of all time, where are all the other championships? Like, look, the Worlds part you've nailed. But by the way, there's also other teams who've got Worlds. So that's the one I do find weird. I agree with you in a way, Kira. Like, what's weird is I actually would have thought, because think about how harsh Korean fans are. I would have thought, I mean, that's the other thing we're all forgetting about. We're all now going to pretend at the end it's like a happy ending and there was no problems the whole time in T1. Then the whole time they were ordering trucks and asking for everyone to be fired and saying, like, you should kill yourselves or something insane. Like, why are we just going to delete that from our minds? Is that like some 1984 shit like that? What? That never happened. They always loved T1, Thorin. Like, what? They didn't. They were hating him. The joke is, I was even the one like, well, maybe don't send trucks, guys. Calm down. It's just a game, you know.
And one more thing, and this is like just like an old head thing, okay? Because you know this as well. Remember in StarCraft when your team would lose like Pro League, or your like A1 player would lose like the OSL or the MSL in like tragic fashion. The fans would be fucking furious, and then you'd be like, oh, he went to World Cyber Games and beat all the other people on behalf of like Korea, and the Koreans would be like, oh, we don't care about World Cyber Games, because at that time they only cared about the domestic Korean stuff. And this happened in StarCraft 2 with not OSL, the GSLs as well, where like GSLs were like the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
It's so weird in League where now we pretend that like LCK like isn't like LCK's unbelievable, like winning LCK is.
By the way,
just, like,
you could easily do a take with that, because I actually agree that is a topic that is not being discussed. Probably the worst thing about the fact that this T1 team has won the 2 Worlds but only won 1 LCK is people are now doing this thing. You've probably seen it on Dom's Twitter, where they pretend like they say that line that sounds great on paper. They go, the thing about Faker kicker is, because he's been around so long, he doesn't care about just random games. He just, they say he turns up and then the quote goes, when it matters. Now, the reason why, if you say that, you're going to make someone like Don Mald, is because you're actually implying like MSI and LCK don't matter. Like, look, they don't matter as much as Worlds, but they do matter. Like, I agree with you, Kira. Like, it's really fucking... I would actually say, look... At Worlds, now because of the LPL thing, it's probably the hardest to win because of the lack of familiarity. But like, after Worlds, even if you think the LPL's better, on paper, LCK is probably actually the third hardest tournament to win after Worlds, isn't it? Like, it's probably still harder than MSI. Like, you've got all those Korean teams. Like, as you saw, FearX and fucking KT can get you in LCK, mate. It's not a joke. So, it is a bit weird the way people act like that's like almost like, they act like that's like the LFL or something, bro. Like, it's fucking LCK. Like, LCK probably back in the day, as I said, my favourite players, Flames, it's probably harder to win LCK back in the day than Worlds.
Yeah, particularly the Korean fans. It was just such a, watching the chefs was just so strange.
It's true.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.